Good morning and welcome to day one of the North Dakota Aviation Association Fly-ND Conference. I'm Justin Winiger, the incoming chairman of the North Dakota Aviation Association.
Good morning, I'm Stacy Crumwitty. I'm part of the executive director team for the North Dakota Aviation Association, and we're glad you're here.
Welcome and enjoy the content for day one.
Welcome to this year's virtual North Dakota Aviation Association Conference. I'd like to introduce Justin Reisenauer. Justin has spoke before. He's an excellent speaker. He spoke on medical topics as he's a medical doctor and pilot. He has Rise Above Aviation based at the Mandan Airport. This year, he's going to speak on something a little bit different, wilderness medicine for pilots.
All right, welcome everybody. Hi, my name is Justin Reisenauer, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Pilot's Operating Handbook for Survival. We'll talk about multiple things today. One thing I want to mention is this is a pre-recording, but I will be around for live chat during the actual lecture on Monday to answer any questions as we go through this lecture. And then also afterwards, I'll be around for any further questions, and I'll give you my email at the end so you can email me questions as well. I definitely want everybody to be safe out there when they're flying and make sure that they are comfortable with their survival packs. And I hope you come away with this lecture feeling like you gained a lot of information that is going to be useful for you to apply to your survival packs. Today, we're going to cover some accident statistics. We'll talk about some survival packs and what the minimums are that we should be carrying in them. We'll talk about the mentality of survival. And finally, we'll finish up with discussing some weather extremes. Also, I want to mention I have no financial disclosures to talk about, and I have no relationship or affiliation of any kind with any of the products I'm going to talk about today. They're just ones that I found useful that I really like using. So I don't get any financial incentive for you guys buying the stuff that I talk about today. I just want to make that clear up front as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an emergency physician, an ER doc. I finished UND medical school in 2008. And then went to Michigan State University for residency in emergency medicine. I work full-time as an emergency physician. I'm the director of emergency medicine education at my department where I work. I'm also faculty for the emergency medicine department at the UND School of Medicine. Another hat I wear is I'm the medical director for Badlands Search and Rescue Team. They cover basically north of I-94, west of Bismarck, all the way to the Montana border. And there was a need that was basically needed to be filled, taking care of people out and enjoying the Badlands because it's such an austere environment. And so this Badlands Search and Rescue team got created over the last couple of years here to help fill that void. I also got advanced wilderness expedition training last year to be an expedition physician. And so that's where my talk today comes from, is I'm very interested in wilderness medicine in general and have a passion for it. And so I want to be able to pass that passion along to you guys with the knowledge that I've learned from that course and my extra training. I also am a private pilot. I fly every week. My wife and I have flown all over the US. For me, it's more mental therapy. I just really enjoy being up in the sky. I do have my single engine commercial rating and instrument rating. And with that aviation passion and my medical background, my wife and I started our own business doing aviation medical exams in 2017. Through our business called Rise Above Aviation. We're located at the Mandan Airport at Clear Skies Aviation FBO on the second floor, and our website address is below there. So check us out if you get a chance. So I want to start out with talking about TAFs. Now, remember when you were a student pilot, looking at these TAFs, how daunting they looked, how confusing, but through study, through practice, and real world application, these have become second nature to you. You don't even think twice when you look at a TAF now. I wish I could give you an easy survival measuring stick like this TAF decoder that our pilot instructors failed to give us when we were going through training. But really my goal today is to provide you guys with the tools that you need to create the foundation of your survival planning and preparedness, as well as no matter how complex the environment is that you might face, what you learn today can be applicable to any environment and help save your life or someone else's in the plane with you. So let's look at some of the survivability of accidents through the NTSB reports and FAA. Most of this data comes from Part 121. There's not a lot for Part 135 or Part 91, and that's because the NTSB Survival Factors Committee focus is more on the Part 121 operations, just because there's many, many more people that fly commercial every year than do general aviation or through the private sector. So we'll have to extrapolate the data a little bit, but the accident statistics show that you're more likely to survive than you are to die. And if you are to survive, you're very likely, almost 50% chance of having a serious injury. So it's a flip of a coin. Are you ready? Which side of the coin are you going to be on? And how are you going to take care of yourself depending on which side of the coin you're on? So here's Part 121, air carrier accidents, highest level of injury from 1983 to 2017. And this shows that the fatalities have gone down significantly over the years. However, the serious injuries still have remained quite high. And this next chart basically shows the same thing. The hours of operation from the 80s and 90s were about, you can see up there, now from 2000 to 2017, hours of flight have significantly gone up. However, the fatal accidents have gone down, but the serious accidents still remain high. Now, this is an accident summary for major segments of the aviation in 2018. It was updated September of 2020. And as you can see, us general aviation pilots do lead the list for accidents as well as for fatalities. There's about an 18% fatality rate in 2018 for general aviation, but it's not just us that are dying as pilots, it's our crew, it's our passengers that are with us too. There were 379 fatalities. So my point is we have to have our survival kits prepped for not only us, but the people that are in the aircraft with us. So let's talk about our ELT. We all know that the ELT is one of the first things in our aircraft that can help alert center that we have been involved in an accident and help deploy search and rescue to come find us. But it doesn't do any good if it's not in an armed position. The NTSB has several accident investigations that have shown ELTs to be not armed and not turned on, and thus it was very difficult finding the passengers and the crew after these accidents. Also, what if the ELT becomes detached from the aircraft? Now all of a sudden it's not transmitting through the antenna, it's totally worthless. So make sure you know how your ELT is secured in your aircraft. If it is secured by a Velcro mounting mechanism, over the course of time with temperature changes, pressure changes, vibration, those mechanisms, the Velcro can start to degrade and it can render your ELT not secure. And so we want to make sure at annuals that our ELTs are definitely secured and fastened appropriately because once they become detached from their location, from the antennas, from the aircraft, they're not going to be very helpful for you. 121.5 megahertz transmitters, not as effective as 406 megahertz ELTs. Make sure you know which one you have. 406 have some added benefits of better position accuracy and more frequent reporting, as well as just overall a better ELT in general. So let's talk about a couple general items here today. So each survival pack should be customized for the flight or trip planned. A flight over the like one of the Great Lakes or over rivers, over sparsely populated areas in the winter, in the summer, over the mountains, all have unique issues that we're going to face. And so we have to adjust our survival packs accordingly. There's no universal survival pack. Each one has to be individualized for the flight and the mission that you're doing. Consider ultralight gear. We all know that weight is king when it comes to weight and balance planning. Everything that you put in payload inside the airplane means avgas that you're not going to be able to put on the plane for extra safety buffers as far as an alternate or if you have any issue and you want to try to extend your flight or get to a different location. We really want to have fuel, and so everything's a trade-off. So try to buy ultralight gear for your survival packs. Each item should have multiple applications. This is going to help cut down on redundancy. It'll help shave off some weight as well. And make sure your pack is waterproof. What if you put down near a river or in a lake? What happens if you survive the accident only to be stuck in rain and now your whole pack is wet and all your gear inside it is wet, and now it's not going to be very useful. Last but not least, ensure all the items in your pack are current and not expired. This includes spare batteries, backup batteries, and batteries for your all your stuff, your emergency locator beacons, your flashlight, lighters, things like that. Make sure that everything is working well. I just pulled my pack out and looked at it again. My food block I had is expired, and they have pretty long shelf life. So I recommend every 6 months you look through your pack, and especially before every flight, you make sure your batteries are charged. A couple more general items to talk about. If you take any medications, make sure that you bring your medications with you and bring a few days extra, not just for however many days you're going to be flying. I can't tell you how often we see people in the emergency department that travel here and they just bring enough medications for their week-long trip, and now all of a sudden they're stuck here or something happens and now they're without their meds. If you require your medications to function, make sure you bring those with you. Also bring a couple liters of water per person in the aircraft. Water is essential for your survival, and having a little buffer of extra water with you before you even start to try to figure out how you're going to survive can be a huge blessing. Also, have direct access to your survival bag. Everything within hand's reach in the aircraft where you're sitting is survival gear. Everything else, including things in the baggage compartment, are just camping gear. If you don't have direct access to it, it may not be there after the accident and you may not find it, and therefore it's not going to be helpful to you at all. Make sure you get some additional training in wilderness first aid, especially if you're not comfortable managing wounds and doing splinting and things like that. I was going to do a course last year in August down at Custer State Park, and we're still going to do one of those, so keep your ears open for the near future. We're still going to put on one of those events. I would like to do one of those events every year for pilots across the Midwest and change locations, but we didn't want our first conference to be during the height of COVID. And so depending on how COVID pans out over the next 6 months, keep your ears open. We're definitely going to host one of those conferences, and I hope you join us for it. The most important survival gear that you can have with you is your brain. Make sure you use it. And that's why you're here today attending these lectures and trying to better yourself, is figuring out how best to manage emergent situations. This may make obvious sense, but the bigger the bag, the more stuff you're going to pack. There's no way that you can plan for everything possible that's going to happen in a survival situation. Improvising is one of the best ways that you're going to help for your survival. So don't plan on bringing a huge bag. I would recommend 30-liter bag or less for you to not pack so much. It'll minimize your weight, but it'll still allow you to bring all the essential things that you'll need. So here's my survival pack that I toss in my airplane. Make sure that you get a backpack that's bright in color. That's going to help you stand out, help people spot you. Make sure it's waterproof, lightweight. Mine weighs 4 ounces, fully loaded, 12.5 pounds. It fits really nice between the two passengers and back. In the back seat, I can reach right back and grab it. Pockets are nice to have. Take the water bottles in and ice packs and other materials. So let's go over the pack overview. I call these the Big Five. These are what I think every pack should have minimum in them. So we're going to go through each one of these individually here. So first, for shelter. This begins the moment you step out of the door. Your clothing is going to be the first line of defense in survival situations. Are you going to be going someplace where there's a lot of rain? You want to make sure you have emergency ponchos, large garbage bags that you can use for rain gear, or you can use them to collect water. Are you going over the mountains in the wintertime? You want to have a shovel with you. You want to be able to have your winter jacket on, your beanies, your gloves. I put those in my pocket when I'm flying. I don't toss them in the back seat. I wear my jacket. I just unzip it. I have layers, and then put your gloves and hat and beanie, etc., in your pockets on you, so they're readily available if you were to put down. I also wear snow boots with me, or big hiking boots when I am going out over the mountains or in the wintertime. I don't put my snow boots in the back baggage compartment for emergency purposes. Wear everything on you that you're going to need in that survival situation. For a pilot, in my opinion, a tarp is the most essential thing you can bring. It is multiple use. It will help serve as a very quick shelter. I can put a tarp up and build a shelter within 2 or 3 minutes pretty easily with some paracord and stakes. The top right picture is a typical A-frame shelter that you can make. You can tack the back side of it down and make a closed A-frame shelter, and that helps keep the water off you, get you out of the wind. Also, if you had a hiking pole or a stick, you can use that, like the bottom left picture here, and then pull the corners in, and now you're completely secluded and away from the weather elements. If your tarp rips, no problem, or you have the eye holes that you would tie onto and those rip through, just get a small rock or a handful of dirt and push it up underneath the tarp and then wrap paracord around it. Now you have a good anchor point to tie off to. Emergency blankets are okay for helping trap a little bit of heat in, but they're not good at insulating. So I'd recommend you bring a sleeping bag of some sorts as well as an inflatable sleeping pad to help keep you up off that ground, because you're going to lose a lot of heat transfer in the cold ground if you're laying directly on it. So it's going to help you stay warmer by having some sort of buffer. If you don't have a sleeping pad, you can take 6 inches of pine cones, pine needles, leaves to pack as insulation that you could lay on top of. A couple other considerations. Part of your pre-flight planning, look at the prevailing winds, what direction when you're going to be flying. So if you do have the engine out, you can land into the prevailing winds, but that also helps you for building shelters, help out of the wind. Avoid low spots down by creek or river beds where it could be cooler. Avoid areas where there could be a lot of flash flooding or water coming downstream down the hill that might wash into your shelter and cause issues. These are another alternative if you don't have a tarp, is you can make what's called debris shelters. The downside is these can take several hours to make. There's multiple varieties, multiple ways to make them, but basically you need one reasonable size stick, the diameter of your forearm or wrist, and you lay one end down to the ground, prop the other end up, and then just get a bunch of small sticks and start stacking them up against this to form the walls. And then use 1 or 2 feet worth of pine needles, leaves, grass to stack up against the sides to create your wall. You can also dig a 6-inch hole and put a little fire in the front corner, and then stack some rocks up against your wood to prevent the heat or flames from getting onto your wood. And you can make a little hole in the sidewall, pulling some of the leaves or pine needles away to create a little exhaust port so the smoke isn't getting all stuck inside your debris shelter. But the smoke initially is good because it's going to flush out the spiders and other bugs that are in the material that you put along your walls, and it's going to help clear them out too. In the wintertime, snow caves are another great option. So I would definitely pack a lightweight snow shovel if I'm going over the mountains or any flight during the wintertime. If you don't have any snow that you can dig down into, you can always pile the snow up for these snow caves. But again, these take a lot of time. They're going to take a couple hours to make. And so really, I think the tarp is the best thing to bring as a shelter in an emergency situation for pilots because it's super lightweight. For these snow caves, you're going to pile the snow about 5 feet high, 7 feet wide, and pack it in as you're making the pile. And then let it sit for about an hour. And then you come back and you can start digging your hole at the bottom of it. And as you get inside, this top right picture shows your sleeping arrangement. You should have just a little bit higher than the actual floor of the snow cave. That's going to help keep some of the heat in. You're going to stay warmer at that area. If you have some sticks, you can break sticks to be about the length of your forearm. And usually you want the walls of these to be about a foot thick, thicker on the bottom than they are on top. And as you stick these sticks in before you start digging, once you get inside and you start scooping out that snow, when you hit the sticks, you're going to know you're about a foot thick for the walls. Here's an improvised snow cave. These are really cool, quick, easy to erect versus piling up a big snow. So if you have depth that you can dig down 4 feet, these are really good to make as well. Put some sticks across the top after you dig your 4-foot hole. The tarp goes across the top of that and secured with snow around the edges and also some stakes to hold it down. And then you can channel or dig a little tunnel into the hole that you've dug, and that will help keep you quite warm as well. So these are also fun to make. I know everybody's wishing there's snow now, so you can go out and try these. So let's move on to signaling. Again, signaling starts with what you leave the house with. Make sure you have bright clothing, make sure your tarp is bright, your backpack is bright. That's going to help search and rescue find you a lot easier than leaving with earthy tones or black clothing on. So it's really important before you step out of the house and go for a flight to choose wisely what kind of clothing you're going to be wearing. Also, a whistle is an absolute must. Put that on your bag. It's lightweight. You can hear a whistle for up to a half mile away. For versus somebody shouting or yelling, you're not going to hear near as far as you would a whistle. So whistles are very crucial for a survival pack. Another thing to consider are survival mirrors. A small mirror like this, you can see for 10 miles up in the air. A larger mirror up to 20 miles. At nighttime, you can shine your flashlight onto this mirror, and that will also help reflect light up into the air for people to find you. It's multiple use. You can look inside your mouth with it. You can use it for multiple other things. So a survival mirror, super lightweight, definitely highly recommended. If you don't have a survival mirror or it gets lost or broken, use other things on you. Use your watch, use your phone face, take tinfoil with you. That also works good as a reflector, and you can cook on it, so multiple use. Fire, it's okay, but then you're stuck with, do you have the fuel sources? Do you have materials you can burn for a fire? Smoke coming up from a fire is not going to be super readily visible to search and rescue unless it's a large fire. What I think everybody should carry for sure is one of these devices, a personal locator beacon. This is what I carry on the bottom right. It's called the Rescue Link. It's about $325, 5.4 ounces. It's waterproof, it floats, it's lightweight. There's no subscription to it. You basically open up the antenna, hit the red button, and that sends out an SOS signal, has all your contact information linked to it, and they will start calling emergency contacts and they will come find you. It also has a built-in strobe, and so at nighttime, it'll flash, and that'll also be helpful for search and rescue to come find you. It uses GPS positioning. It also uses 406 megahertz and 121.5 megahertz signals for them to come find you as well. The bottom left in the middle there, that's a laser. You can get those from Aircraft Spruce. That's an electronic laser flare. So it lasts for about 40 hours on the lithium battery. The downside to these are they only have about less than a 5-degree divergence. So you really got to be shining it right at the people that are trying to find you. They do go for about 3 miles in the daytime and up to 20 miles at nighttime, but I think it is somewhat limited use because of the divergence of the laser. Another thing would be one of these Garmin InReach minis, super lightweight. They only weigh 3.5 ounces. They're $350. The battery life to them, that's a downside, he's got to charge it. The battery life is anywhere from 34 hours to 24 days, depending on what mode you're using. But you can send text messages via global satellites with it. You can link it to a Garmin watch and to your phone. So if you don't have direct access to it, you could activate it through your Garmin watch. You can, again, send text messages like I talked about. You can also drop an SOS signal for them to come find you. And it also leaves breadcrumbs. So as you're going, you can drop little pins of where you're at. So I think that's another very useful adjunct for signaling, is carrying one of these Garmin InReach devices. The other thing I should say is they do require a monthly subscription, anywhere from $12 a month up to $50 a month. But you can, if you just want to use, instead of annually, you can do it monthly. Let's say you've got a big cross-country trip across the US planned coming up next month. You can activate it and just use it for the 1 month that you're going to be doing a long trip. So fire, the big key for fire is making sure that you have multiple backups and not just reliant on one source. I really like these flint strikers. I wrap mine up in saran wrap so it's not rubbing back and forth on each other inside my pack, just to minimize the risk of a spark in the air. These lighters are also, these electronic lighters are really cool. We'll see if you guys can see this here. So they're waterproof. They work really well. Take it out here. They last for 300 strikes. So windproof, waterproof, and they last for 300 strikes. They're super lightweight. Those are fun. Another thing to consider would be the stormproof matches. They also work really well. Don't light them in your house. They produce a lot of smoke and can set off fire alarms. Not that I know from personal experience. Don't ask my wife about it. But these work really well. Also windproof, waterproof, super cheap, $3 from Walmart. They come in a little box, super easy to use. And then another thing I really encourage everybody to bring are cotton balls. You can take the cotton ball. I like to kind of fluff it up so it makes more of a surface area. These are highly flammable. And I also add some Vaseline around the cotton ball. And then I take an old medicine pill bottle and I basically carry this with the cotton balls with Vaseline stuffed in them, and I just stuff a whole bunch in here, and that's my tinder I carry with me. Super lightweight, keeps it clean so your bag doesn't get dirty. But these start with rain, in water. The cotton balls with the Vaseline start very quickly. They can also be used to put up your nose if you got a bloody nose. They're very good for putting on burns or wounds. So multiple use again. The other thing is this pyro putty. I have this too that's made in the USA. It's 20 bucks. You get about 6 of these. These little putty containers kind of look like lip balm, but when you pull them out, they have these little fibers that they turn into just kind of like a cotton ball, and they are highly flammable and work very well. Again, windproof and waterproof. When you light them up, they keep burning really well. So, and then these fire sticks, also just another tinder, but you should plan for about 30 minutes of tinder, so you have some material to keep the fire going. So for water, you need to work really hard early on to get water and store it. So that means you have to have ways to collect the water. Take garbage bags, use your poncho, you can use your tarp for water collection, and you can get some silicone collapsible 2 to 5 gallon buckets that are lightweight that you can put in the airplane too, and that helps to collect water. Everybody, I think, should carry this. It's called alum powder, potassium aluminum sulfate. You can get this in the grocery store, in the seasoning aisle. It's used for pickling, but it's also used for what we call water flocculation. So if you filter some dirty water, you collected dirty water from a muddy stream or just from a muddy hole where you see some water that's collected, you can filter that stuff out, take a pinch of this alum and put it into the water and stir it up with a stick or your finger for about 3 minutes, and then walk away and leave it for 30 minutes. At the end of the 30 minutes, that alum, over the course of 30 minutes, is going to bind the phosphorus that's in the water and form precipitates, and it's going to make it heavy and sink to the bottom. So you'll have some clear water that you can filter off and drink out of. So this is Colorado River going through the Grand Canyon. I did a hike in the Grand Canyon with 12 friends. It was a bachelor party, and this is water that we would filter out and use alum for. It looks really gross, but after the alum, it looks just like that last picture on the far right. Just crystal clear water that you can use a filter to help create drinking water with. So water disinfection, I could talk to you for hours just about water disinfection, but I'm going to simplify it here for you guys. Boiling is the best method. The downside is you have to have fuel. You got to have something that you can boil the water in, and it takes time. It takes time to boil the water. Once the water is boiling, then it takes time to cool it before you can drink it. And so it's not always the best option, especially in a survival situation. So the next best option is going to be a combination treatment. Filters, water filters work great. The Sawyer water filter is one of my favorites. Again, you can get a water bottle. This is a Life water bottle from the gas station. Most water bottles, it works, but this filter just screws right on. It's super lightweight. The downside is these cannot freeze. So if you use it and then put it in your airplane and fly to 15,000 feet and it's -8 and it's cold in back and these freeze, they're not going to be useful. The filter breaks inside and it renders it not useful. So once these filters get wet, then you got to keep it in your pocket or wherever you're sleeping to keep it warm. So I just take one of these and I have a new one. I toss it in my survival kit and I just keep it for the survival situation. They work very well though. They're super cheap. They're 20 bucks off Amazon or wherever. You can get them from Walmart too. But I think they work great. Iodine tablets are another consideration. However, if you have thyroid issues, if you're allergic to iodine, if you're pregnant, these are not tablets for you. Contact time, meaning after you put them into the water, is about 30 minutes before you can drink the water. Sometimes it gives a little funny taste that people don't like. You can add some vitamin C, or you could also take some lemonade mix with you that's lightweight and sprinkle it in there to help for the flavor as well. Another option is this chlorine dioxide, a couple drops of each of these different part A and part B. However, this takes time, about 4 hours to sterilize the water. So again, if you really need water badly in a quick situation, probably not going to be your best option. Chlorine bleach, I think, is a great option for pilots. It is super lightweight. You can carry it in just a small 3-ounce bottle. It only takes 1 or 2 drops per liter, depending on how dirty the water is. But if it's really cold water or real dirty water, then you're going to have to increase the contact time up to 60 minutes, 90 minutes for it to become more sterilized. The other thing I like is these ultraviolet light scary pens. The downside is it's a battery dependent. So you're going to be stuck using batteries. And also the tip is made out of glass. So if you break the tip, it's useless. You can't use it anymore. But they're very effective. For one charge, you get about 50 liters of water purification with it. And one charge, and it sterilizes the water, kills everything off. So I think those are a great option to carry as well. So have backup plans. Food, in my mind, I think absolutely bring a ration bar, a food ration bar. Those are going to be the easiest, the best thing for pilots to bring. You can't always count on being able to catch fish or rodents. You can eat worms. When you get a worm, you got to basically milk it and squeeze out all of the intestines and guts from it. But it has pretty good protein. So you can eat worms. You could collect ants, grasshoppers, things like that. But food ration blocks are going to be definitely, I think, the go-to for pilots. They are good for about 5 years. So again, make sure you check the shelf life on them before you put them in your packs and try to make your passengers eat expired food. But other options would include safety pins, basically wired together for hooks. You can use pop tops to make hooks. You can also use paper clips. I can see this here. You can use paper clips, cut them and roll them up, make a little eyelet on the end here. So those make good hooks. But I think in our survival kits, we should definitely include some fishing line, about 20 to 30 feet of fishing line, hooks or safety pins that you can use. This bottom right thing is called a gouge. So you can take a piece of wood and just sharpen the tips of it and then wrap some fishing line around the middle of it and put a worm or something in through the middle, and then the fish will swallow it. It gets stuck in their stomach. So that'd be another option. The medical side, there's numerous things that you can carry, and my kit is going to look different than your kits or the next person's kit, but I'm going to give you the basics that I think every medical kit should have stuff in. So there's 3 categories: wound, medications, and miscellaneous. For the wound, you definitely want stuff to control bleeding and to control abrasions and cuts. The Zero Foam is really good stuff. That is basically gauze with Vaseline on it. It can be used for fire starting. It can be really good for burns, for cuts and wounds. It works really good. It keeps the bandage from sticking. So I think you definitely need something like Zero Foam or Band-Aids. You should take some antibiotic ointment of some sorts. You need something to cover for blisters. Blisters are quite common in the wilderness. Sandwich bags you can use for irrigation, fill it up with water and then squeeze the bag to help wash wounds out. And Coban is that really sticky, stretchy material that they put on your arm after a blood draw or after you donate blood. I think you need something for hemorrhage control also. This Quick Clot or chitosan are 2 really good options. I have both. They both work well. I've used both of them before. The chitosan is made from the exoskeleton of lobsters, shrimp, and shellfish and clams. So if you're allergic to shellfish, there's a possible allergic component to it. So then you would want to get Quick Clot instead. The Quick Clot is made out of kaolin, which is a mineral derivative. It's basically a clay derivative. It's an inorganic mineral. There's no allergic component to it. But both of those help the body to clot quicker. So I definitely think you should add something like Quick Clot or chitosan to your hemorrhage control in the medical kit for wounds. Medications, again, home medications. Take your home meds plus a couple of days extra. You'll want something for pain, something for diarrhea, something for constipation. Are you a 1 or 2 Starbucks drinks per day type of person? If so, you may want to add some caffeine pills, because if you go a few days without caffeine and now you get a bad headache, nausea, try to imagine thinking and functioning at a high level when you're already feeling awful because of caffeine withdrawals. So that's something you might want to add in your kit as well. I think you should take stuff for allergies too, like Benadryl, hydrocortisone cream for skin allergic reactions, as well as if you are around anything that becomes allergic to you. Benadryl is also a very important medication in the kit, I think. miscellaneous stuff or tools that you might need. Sunglasses are extremely important both in winter and in summer. If you get irritation to your eyes because of UV light, we call it UV keratitis. It is very, very painful. It's hard for people to see, and you really want to protect your main senses when you're in the wilderness. Seeing, smelling, hearing, your function with your extremities. So other things such as fractures are pretty common after plane accidents. So I think things like SAM splints, which are aluminum, lightweight, splinting material with some ACE wraps, are key. And then tourniquet as well for hemorrhage control. If you ask the number one thing that people that have gone on expeditions or long backcountry hikes that they could not go without, it's butt wipes. So butt wipes is number one on the list of things to put into your survival kit, and you'll thank me later someday. So I'd like to move on now and talk about the mentality of survival. There's a really neat book. It's a fun read, easy read. It's called Deep Survival by Lawrence Gonzalez. And it dives into the mentality that people that have survived these heroic, treacherous experiences. And it's not what you think. It isn't always the Navy SEAL that has extra training that survives. Sometimes it's the person with no training whatsoever who survived a horrific accident, an event that nobody thought that they would survive. And this author interviews these people and gets their take on how they made it through. And it's a really interesting read. So I encourage all of you to look through that. And if you can, order the book and read it. It's a lot of fun. But they talk about working very hard early on. You want to focus on getting water early on, and you don't want to basically get sucked into the pity mode where you're just feeling down about the current situation and becoming hopeless. Know what you can do. It's very important that you know what you can do rather than what the current situation is facing that you think maybe, well, I can't do that. So there's, it's always about the body stronger than the mind. So you really have to put your mind to surviving. Things can always get worse. Make sure you avoid the enemies of survival. These include loneliness, panic, fear, concessions to comfort. So you don't have the AC, you don't have the heat, you don't have that comfy bed anymore. Injury and loss of will to live. Never trust untested equipment. That's why I highly recommend you go out when you get the stuff for your survival kit, go use it and apply it. Go on a hike and bring a water filter with you and practice filtering water with it. Try the iodine tablets, try different things. Figure out how to use it before you're actually in the emergent situation where you're going to need it. Practice, practice, practice. And so practice using your equipment in a safe environment prior to having to use it. A couple other things, really remain calm. You are in control of your emotions and you have to keep them in check. Also have a plan. This includes pre-flight briefing with your passengers and with yourself of what you would do in the areas that you're going to be flying across and how you would survive. And face reality and take action. Remember those 5 pilot attitudes, the hazardous attitudes they talk about. Specifically, remember invulnerability, it won't happen to me, and resignation, what's the use? Those are 2 very important pilot attitudes that come into play with mentality of survival. You can control how you respond to the situation, so make sure you take action. Be aware that you're not functioning at your highest mental capacity during these events. They're very stressful, and emotion is going to dictate your behavior. So you really want to keep your emotions in check. We don't rise to the occasion in a survival situation. We revert back to our highest level of training. And so that's why it's really important that we practice with our equipment before we go out and why we keep our emotions in check. Expect that the world is going to keep changing. The world, the environment you're facing is always going to keep changing. So you just need to adapt with it. You stay rested and rehydrate often, and you should only operate at about 60% capacity. Anything over that, especially if you're sweating, you're just using extra energy that you shouldn't. So only operate at about 60% capacity. And the last step is just being committed to survival, knowing that you can make it through and just focusing on one task at a time, completing one issue, getting rid of one issue at a time. That's going to be the best way for you to survive. So let's move on now and talk about some weather extremes. Lightning is fascinating. It always has fascinated me. I'm sure you, like others, and myself, love to just go outside and watch these storms roll in. But lightning has over 30 million volts per strike. And we're going to talk about a couple ways that you can get injured from lightning. The most common type of strike is a ground strike, where the lightning strikes the ground and then dissipates, travels through the ground, up into one of your legs, goes across your body, and then down into the other leg. Side splash is the next most common, where you're standing next to a lone tree that gets struck by lightning, and then the lightning jumps to you. The least common is direct strikes. Now, these have the highest mortality if you're struck directly by lightning, but it's not very common. And the next would be contact type strikes, where the lightning struck a rock and a large boulder or something, and you went up and touched the rock or touched the tree, and then the electricity, as it's dissipating, jumps to you. It's going to choose the path of least resistance. So the issue with lightning strikes is that basically it will stop your heart when you get struck by lightning. Your heart will reset itself. However, in the brain, the breathing center in the brain takes longer to reset than your heart does. And so initially your heart stops, it resets, but your breathing doesn't come back. And so we call this a reverse triage in medicine. If you go to a disaster and you see a bunch of people on the ground, the ones that are basically unresponsive, not moving, you tag those people as dead and move on to the others that you can save. In lightning, it's reverse. It's the opposite. If you see people that are unresponsive, not moving, those are the ones you go to first, because you can still breathe for them if they have a pulse and save their life. The 3 people that I've taken care of that have been struck by lightning all brought their shoes in like this, or EMS, I should say, brought their shoes in. And initially I was quite curious. I thought, well, gosh, what the heck causes this? You can see the bottom right picture. You can see the burns on this guy's left lower leg. And all 3 people I've seen have had their shoes look just like this guy's shoes in the bottom right. The shoes are totally blown off. Sweat is an excellent conductor of electricity. So sweaty feet and sweaty socks, as you get electrocuted, that water evaporates, it explodes and vaporizes very quickly and explodes the shoes off. So here's a couple other pictures of lightning related events. This is a ground transfer of lightning into all of these cows standing next to each other. With cows, they have 4 different points touching the ground. And so it's easy for the electricity to go through path of least resistance up through each leg and back across the body and cause them to die. So if you're close to lightning, you want to get in only one point of contact to the ground. So either put a backpack or insulation on the ground, and then crunch yourself up in a very tight position, a low profile position. If you don't have anything to insulate yourself from the ground, you want to be resting on the balls of your feet, leaning forward, everything touching together, both knees together, ankles, feet together, to create one point of contact to the ground. Other thing I want to mention is if you're outside up on the mountaintop and your hair starts standing up like this, that is an imminent lightning strike on you waiting to happen. Hightail it for lower ground very, very quickly. Spread out more than 25 feet away from each other so you don't all get electrocuted, and head for lower ground. A couple more things to talk about with lightning. The odds of being struck by lightning are about 1 in 500,000. Males are affected 5 times more than females, and 85% of fatalities are men. I'm not going to guess why that is, but just to let you know. Most commonly affected is 20 to 45-year-olds. And pregnant women that are hit by lightning, half of the babies die. So it's a significant amount of energy going through the body. The state with the highest lightning strike injuries is Florida. Texas is a close second. And 70% of people struck by lightning will have long-term issues with their brain and with their heart. So you also get this cool temporary skin tattoo, although I'm not going to volunteer for it. But we call this ferning pattern. And the capillaries, the small blood vessels under the skin, rupture from the electrical current. And it leads to these weird, basically ferning tree-like tattoos on the body that last for a couple days. So I now want to move into some hypothermia. I learned how to kiteboard out in Lake Michigan, and the water temps there can be anywhere from the 30s to the 60s. It's a pretty cold lake. It's the deepest of the Great Lakes. And so I've had quite a bit of experience with hypothermia out there. And initially, we all know this, when you start getting hypothermic, your body starts shaking. You try to warm yourself up by activating those muscles involuntarily. Your respiratory rate goes up, your metabolic rate goes up, your body tries to make those cells more active to generate heat. If you aren't able to heat up just by this method because of of the temperatures, you'll drop into moderate hypothermia. Try imagining tying knots or putting up a survival shelter or starting a fire with no fine motor skills. So next time you want to try to do some of those things, I want you to put on big, thick winter gloves and then try to do the same activity. And that'll put you in the mindset of what it's like if you're moderately hypothermic, trying to save yourself and do different activities. The muscles are stiff, you can't concentrate or think as well, you get exhausted easily. If somebody in your party stops shivering, that's a sign that they are severe, they're on moderate hypothermia, close to severe hypothermia. So at the later stages of moderate hypothermia, you'll start losing that ability to shiver. And last, once you develop severe hypothermia, you basically become unconscious. So super cold people that are unconscious are in that severe hypothermia stage. And it is interesting, you get this paradoxical undressing when you are severely hypothermic. So the body does all it can to keep those blood vessels super constricted, to get all the blood flow to your heart and your brain and other organs. And at the last second before you die, 5 minutes before you die, that mechanism fails and your blood vessels dilate. So you get this rush of blood flow to your skin. And these people feel like they're on fire. They feel like they're super hot. And so they end up taking off all their clothes. And a lot of times people will think there's foul play involved when law enforcement gets there and sees these people undressed in the wild. But this is pretty common behavior for severe hypothermia. So my point with that story is that our perception of being warm or cold has nothing to do with our core temperature. It has everything to do with our skin temperature. So when you drink that shot of whiskey you put in your survival kit because you really wanted something to warm you up, it's not really helping your core temperature. You drink that hot whiskey or that hot drink and you feel the warmth in your body, that's your blood vessels dilating and blood flow going to your skin. It has nothing to do with your core temperature going up. In fact, when we are in a hypothermic environment, our core temperature stays the same for about 20 minutes. Because of the shivering and the increased metabolic rate and respiratory rates going up, our body is able to maintain that, but then it will drastically go off. So drinking hot or cold liquids, if you're warm or cold, isn't really going to change your core temperatures. So we want to avoid dehydration. Dehydration constricts our blood vessels, decreases the blood flow to our skin, and makes us more prone to frostbite. We want to prevent further cooling and further heat loss by making sure we're well insulated. And we want to avoid freezing, thawing, and refreezing. So if you get frostbite injuries like this, and you're not going to be able to seek and get medical help within the next 3 hours, you don't want to rewarm these to 104 degrees and then walk out and let them freeze again. It's going to be much more extensive damage. Also, carbohydrates and liquid are important to help fuel your body in the process of keeping yourself warm. So black blisters like the ones up on the right, the purple blackish blisters are worse. That signifies that the blood vessels have been involved and have ruptured. The clearer blisters, clear fluid on the bottom right, are better frostbite because that means that their blood vessels are still intact, and those typically will heal quite well. The person on the top right probably will end up with amputations of those digits. In the bottom left with no blisters, that's a lot worse frostbite, meaning that basically the blood vessels, everything down to the bone, have been frostbitten and are dead. So passive rewarming, everything you can do at home or out in the wilderness, only gets you about 1.5 degrees Celsius per hour rewarming. At the hospital, we can do about twice that. But really, if you really want to warm up a severely hypothermic patient, you got to do bypass. So for hypothermia, make sure that you fly wearing proper clothes when you leave the house, stay hydrated, consume carbohydrates, get out of the elements, build a shelter. I would take these hot hand warmers with you to try to keep yourself warm, get rid of wet garments, blankets, insulating equipment, etc. So I want you to consider this, non-seaplane landing. You end up in the water temp is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, the outside air temp is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's 10-mile-an-hour wind. Which is going to keep you warmer, staying in the water or getting out of the water? Let's think about that a minute. This is where the movies got it right. Water conducts heat 25 times better than air. So it is always better to get out of the water. So if you have wet clothing on, make sure you take it off, keep yourself dry with good rain gear. But water is the enemy to losing heat. You will definitely lose a lot more heat in the water, regardless of the temperature, than you will out of the water. There's a lot of heat-related injuries in the Grand Canyon. About 18 people a year die from heat-related injuries. They have signs saying, don't hike the canyon. It can be 120 degrees at the canyon floor in the shade, and your loss of heat, or your sweating and loss of heat that way, your loss of sweating at the desert temperatures is imperceivable, because as soon as the sweat forms, it evaporates off the skin because it's so dry. There's a little hiker down here on the trail. This is the Grand Canyon hike that we had done together. So for hyperthermia, our hands have these arterial venous anastomoses. The hands are the best conductors of heat and cold transfer from the body. So there's two different types of hyperthermia. There's heat exhaustion, where our body gets cramps and fatigue, and there's heat stroke. And that's where we have trouble walking, confusion, we become altered. So really the big difference is people that are altered have heat stroke. People that are not altered have heat exhaustion. And so we want to get in the shade, get out of the heat. We want to use evaporative cooling, spraying ourselves down with lukewarm water and fanning ourselves to cool each other off. Taking a couple ice packs with you in your kit is important, and putting those ice packs in the hand to dissipate that heat. So I really appreciate all of your time today and your attention. I want to just reiterate a couple things before we finish up here. Again, there's no universal pack. You have to make yours for you. You have to adapt each pack for the mission, the type of mission where you're going to be flying. Carry the big five, again, shelter, signaling, water, food, and also make sure that you're packing not only for yourself, but also for your passengers that are coming with you. Make sure you have a good medical kit with you as well, and have stuff for signaling. Never trust untested equipment. Practice, practice, practice with it. Everything that's within reach is survival gear. Everything else, including what's in the baggage compartment, is just camping gear. Prepare for the weather extremes and adapt to your environment. So I thank you for your attention today. I wish you well. I'll be around afterwards here for any questions, and feel free to email me if you have any questions at all regarding survival kits as well. I'd be happy to see and take care of you if you need any medical exam stuff that comes up in the future too. So take care, stay flying, see you up in the sky.